The world trembles, emotions flood, reality warps. This eclipse ignites madness. Shall we choose to evolve? I will describe the good, the bad, and the ugly potentials of this Virgo eclipse. As usual, I'll start off with some of the more challenging aspects of this, which we can observe across the collective, so that we can use our awareness to sidestep some of that dramatic energy as it plays games with our own egoism. I will also highlight some of the higher octave potentials where we can really work with this astrological energy instead of against it for our own betterment and evolution. My name is Bryan Colter. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, and here's my take of what's going on in the sky. So as we can see here, we have this big, beautiful Virgo eclipse. And part of any lunar event is the moon's relationship to the sun. And during full moons or lunar eclipses, the moon is opposite the sun. And here you can see the sun's in Pisces, Neptune's in Pisces, which is quite significant because Neptune rules Pisces. And then we have Saturn in Pisces, which is a major feature here because not only is Saturn conjunct the sun, but it's also opposed the moon. And always when considering the full moon, we want to tie in the planet that rules that sign. The planet that rules Virgo is Mercury. And Mercury is super strong right now because it's in the process of stationing, which basically means from our perspective here on Earth, it looks as though Mercury's completely stands still in the sky. And it does this right before it goes direct or retrograde. So about a day after the official eclipse, Mercury will start retrograding, but it's stationed now. So not only does this strong Mercury rule the eclipse sign, but it's stationing. And whenever a planet's stationed, it's at maximum power. And as we can see, Mercury in the sign of Aries is holding hands with Venus, the goddess of love. So this conjunction here will be a major player as well. Now, during every eclipse, the sun and moon are going to be near the nodes of the moon, which highlights the nodal shift, which happened back in January, into Virgo and Pisces. So I've been talking a lot about the polarity of these two signs, and I did a full deep dive video where I talked about this nodal shift beginning an 18.5-month transition, karmic transition for humanity. So we'll sprinkle in some, Pisces and Virgo, of course, in this video. But if you really want a more detailed analysis of these opposing signs, I recommend you check out that video. I'll actually put a link to it. You'll see a big thumbnail on your screen at the very end of this video. And if you want to deepen your studies, you can go there next. Eclipses are major events. Very, very strong during the eclipse. Equally as strong, I'd say 3 or 4 days after the eclipse as we continue to be in this full moon phase. The eclipse happens on March 13th. And then the 3 or 4 days afterwards, it's super strong. It continues to be strong really for 2 weeks. But from a larger point of view, eclipses are like a 6-month shock wave until the next eclipse season. Now, we're going to talk about Saturn and Pisces a lot, but one of the meta archetypes I like to use for this placement is that of the wizard archetype. So allow me to invoke the imagery of Gandalf here for a moment, and imagine Gandalf just slamming his staff into the ground, creating this massive 6-month shock wave of evolutionary potential, which is at peak right now. Lunar eclipses are essentially super full moons. And during a full moon, the moon is at maximum power. A word closely associated with the moon is luna. So during lunar eclipse, full moons on steroids, people are more lunatic. They're more lunatic, which is to say much more vulnerable to reflexive emotional behavior based on what they experience from, external stimulus. People are more easily emotionally triggered. Police officers have observed that crime goes up statistically every full moon. teachers have observed, especially teachers of younger students, that they become more rambunctious during full moons. For thousands of years, astrologers have noticed a relationship between the movements of the moon and our own emotional reactivity, which can create a lot of drama on the world stage, especially in cultures and countries that are already experiencing great tensions with each other. For example, the two big wars going on, or where there's great strife connected to political tensions, such as in Romania or in the US or many countries, really. So people and their emotions are coming out aggressively in full battle dress now as they're more lunatic. And this is expressed in a more Virgo way. Obviously, I'm pointing to the challenges of this and I'm slanting my interpretation more negatively, but we'll get to the more positive. It's like, how do we harness this energy in a little bit here? But this more lunatic energy or darker side of Virgo will often get manifest as one of the potentials of Virgo, which is the perfectionist archetype, which can be very much in other people's business. It's a sign, very vulnerable to states of consciousness in the fear spectrum, such as worry and concern. And if we have great emotional worry about something going on in our external environment, the impulse, the great emotional impulse, is to express oneself, to point that out. It's the most detail-oriented sign in the zodiac, Virgo is. Now, expressing this laced with heavy emotion more negatively, allow me to invoke the imagery or the archetype of the nitpicker or the shouldinator up in other people's business, saying, you should do this instead, you should do that, etc. Now, Pisces is a water sign. All water signs are on the emotional plane. So these are yet more votes about sensitivity, although with this supermoon here, it's more about emotional sensitivity. With Pisces, it's more about psychic sensitivity, which can create a perfect storm potentially. People are just feeling more intensely, much more intensely. Now, what about this supercharged Mercury in the sign of the warrior Aries next to the love god Venus? Mercury is of our communication, is known as the messenger of the gods. So the planet of communication in the sign of the warrior, where our words and our intelligence expressed as words, our perception of reality, formulating into thoughts and then expressed outwardly, warrior style, which is to say, could be more aggressive, cutting, destructive, aggressively disrupting Venus, which is to say our relationships, the balance and harmony in our interpersonal relationships. Now, relationships can come in a variety of flavors, some of them close, some of them not so close. But we just look at the possibility of the challenge of disrupting the inner concentric and outer concentric rings of our relationship, disrupting that harmony, creating more polarity consciousness and divisiveness instead of unity consciousness. Here's the metaphor, and I do like to use extreme examples to give a sense of the juxtaposition. But let's use a divisive figure here, Elon Musk. I can imagine somebody feeling strong emotions regarding this person, and we can use both sides of the equation here, or different perspectives. Saying to somebody else, oh, you think Elon is a good billionaire? You think he's a savior? You think he's out to spread consciousness, save us from doom by sending us to Mars? This altruistic billionaire? How naive are you? How can you not see the conflicts of interest here? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. How can you not see what he's doing? He has this power now that he shouldn't have. It's unconstitutional. How can you believe what you believe? You are part of the problem. I cut you out of my life like a scalpel cuts out an infectious wound. You are dead to me. And then on the flip side, oh, you think Elon Musk is a bad, evil billionaire. the richest man on the planet. He wants to become far richer, even though he couldn't even spend all his money if he wanted to in this lifetime. You think he wants to just destroy lives. How naive are you? How can you not see the corruption and the rot that's pervasive in the U.S. government and governments around the world? How can you not see that he's trying to cut out that rot with laser precision? You are part of the problem. I hermetically seal you from my life. You are dead to me. Now, my goal here is not to poo-poo either perspective or defend one more than the other. Of course, I do have my own opinions, but I try my hardest not to share those in these videos, to remain neutral, to paint the polarity scale. But even beyond that, I don't want to focus really on the details of what I said, but rather the egoism, the pride, the anger, the rage, that which divides us, the dark side of the force, if you will. Pride is cunning. Pride can say, oh no, we're on the precipice of destruction. It's important I express these ideas from a place of righteous indignation. I am virtuous. Egoism is a cunning foe. Very deceptive. And also, we just tie it into this event here, the perfectionism of Virgo, focusing on the minutiae, the tiny details, laced with very strong emotion, which can have a destructive element in our relationships as we cut with sharp words and intellect. Virgo, the nitpicker, becoming so fixated on such a tiny wave, obsessing over its ripples, while missing the ocean's vast dance and interconnected flow, stirring chaos that fractures our unity. This is some of the darker potentials here. Meanwhile, as I said, Saturn in Pisces is a major player here, and Saturn in Pisces is a rather odd couple. On one hand, we have this planet of, we could say, density. It does have a very reality checkish energy, down to earth, that which is practical and tangible, that which is real. Pisces, on the other hand, the mystic, the dreamer, the visionary, is about, on one level, higher levels of consciousness. It's about divinity. It's connecting with something higher than ourselves. It's about higher dimensions instead of this dense dimension. So one of the challenges, which I've been talking about for a long time, ever since Saturn entered the sign, I think about March of 2023, one of the challenges of this transition is the confusion between what is real, Saturn, and what is not real or illusory, Pisces. And since, Pluto is in Aquarius, cementing us in this Aquarian age, the age of information and technology, where everything seems to be speeding up, illusory states of consciousness are also speeding up. They're more compelling. Just look online. You see all the deep fake audios and videos. It's really becoming hard. It's murky, to distinguish what is real from illusory. And one of the darker potentials of Saturn in Pisces, since Saturn rules this domain, it's also the planet of control. Those who seek control in this world leverage Piscean deceit by creating illusions. And this is really, I introduced Saturn and Pisces as the wizard archetype, which is a more positive expression of it. But on the flip side, we have the dark magician. The dark magician is super strong. So I do like to start with some of the more negative challenges, so we can have a conscious awareness of what's going on above what would be considered random chance amongst the sea of people, so that we can kind of sidestep some of those darker motivations, recognizing that, okay, if you feel more emotionally sensitive during this time, it's like, okay, I'm not going to get sucked up into the drama. I'm not going to be more lunatic. I'm going to realize the emotions are strong, but instead of them sort of possessing me in a certain way, because when we're feeling strong emotions, sometimes it can feel like a form of possession where we actually think and act differently because our actions are laced with that emotion, whatever emotion that may be. But stating it positively, we can use those emotions in a very beautiful way for our own evolutionary purposes. Now, one of the positive potentials, let's start here with this supercharged Mercury in the sign of the warrior. On one level, this is the evolutionary task of practicing the art form of intimate conflict resolution. We're feeling the emotion strong, which means there's a strong potential. We're more easily emotionally triggered in our close, intimate relationships in our life. Perhaps there's some codependency issues in some of those relationships. Perhaps there's been some resentments building up in one or both parties. Resentments and contempt come out in full battle dress, tend to anyways, during an event like this. So the art of intimate conflict resolution is to speak up, not from an egoic defensiveness, okay, where those resentments kind of blow up in the relationship. That's the dark side of this. But rather, okay, this has been bothering me. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to be more courageous and brave, warrior style, about my thoughts and my feelings, and be assertive and speak about my needs, okay? Set healthy boundaries if needed, and to just talk these things out, to not be a coward regarding that which is bothering us. How can we use unity consciousness? How can we grow closer together? How can we leverage compromise in this relationship so both our needs are met? And sometimes those conversations can be quite intense. So to enter into them courageously, and here's the kicker, without an expectation of outcome. It's like, I'm going to be brave with my words and my feelings, communicate those to others. What I have no control over is how that other person will respond. But here I am doing my evolutionary work. Okay, going a layer deeper, let's return to this Saturn in Pisces. Again, Saturn represents this densest dimension of reality. Soul chooses to incarnate here. How brave is that? This is the accelerated learning program. It's like taking 10th grade honors chemistry in 6th grade. We can learn a lot here, but part of that is there's a lot of pain and suffering on this planet. And on one level, Saturn represents pain and suffering because it's the planet of growth and wisdom, the wizard archetype. How can I gain spiritual wisdom? Pisces, Saturn in Pisces. You know, the word wizard derives from the word wizened when we get credibility lines on our face. So the positive intention here is to develop more spiritual wisdom. So here we have Saturn representing this third dimension, let's say. And if Saturn could speak to Pisces and try to give advice, reminding the mystic who's reverently, navel gazing, hey, we're in these bodies. We're soul incarnate. We're in flesh. We're the infinite having a finite experience. Let's be in the flesh. Let's focus on the great work. You didn't come here to sit on your hands. Let's get down. Let's get dirty. Let's roll up our sleeves and get down to work. And let's not procrastinate. And if Pisces could respond to Saturn and say, yeah, I agree with you. Let's do the work. And we'll talk about, how that work can be done in a second here. But Pisces says to Saturn, don't forget that we are infinite. Don't forget that this third dimension is actually a virtual reality, so to speak. It is the dream, the Maya, the illusion of it all. It is this third dimension, the realm of pain and suffering, where we as a soul incarnate can choose how we want to respond with thoughts, feelings, and actions in the face of that suffering, of those Saturnian challenges. And this is the cauldron of experience where wisdom is forged through these hard experiences, where we spiritually evolve. So two very different energies, two legitimate perspectives, wanting to come together as an integrated whole, which can happen in a multitude of ways, of course. I'll give a couple examples here. And this is something I talked about in the Virgo Pisces nodal video, again, that I'll link at the end of this one. But the great work, of, and this ties in Virgo, stating it more positively, the servant archetype, the great grounding work of spiritual service, becoming more service to others instead of service to self. okay, I'm feeling these strong emotions. How can I use this as fuel to better other people's lives? Coming from unity consciousness, coming from love, allowing that to create a strong attractor field to ripple out into the world and creating more connection instead of division. Now, on another level, again, how can we strengthen this inner wizard, okay, spiritual wisdom? Saturn represents our capacity to do what we just don't feel like doing. That's why Saturn hates procrastination. When it's in Pisces, a very powerful way of working with this is sit your butt on the ground. Get out your yoga mat. Do some Qigong, okay? But here's the stern Saturn follow-up. It's like, if you do not do it regularly, if you do not commit, if you do not leverage the law of repetition for your own evolution, day in and day out, you won't really benefit that much. The Taoist mystics have a teaching: for every 1 day of meditation you miss, you lose 10 days of progress. Some of the most Saturnian hardcore mystics on the planet. And, whether or not that's accurate mathematically doesn't matter. I agree with the point. Saturn asks for consistency, hard work, burn that midnight oil. Doing what? Pisces things. So whatever meditation or spiritual development means for you, which is going to be different for everybody, there's no better time as Saturn continues to go through this sign for the upcoming couple months. It will go into Aries pretty soon. But during eclipse, you can really harness this powerful energy and the emotionality of it and go within. And the more spiritual wisdom you accrue during this time, the far less susceptible you are to the deceit, the deception, and the drama that is coming out to a very extreme degree, especially over the next 4 days, especially over the next 2 weeks. And of course, this ripples out over 6 months. These are the core evolutionary intentions, with the goal being to expand our consciousness.